Welcome to Let's Talk About Health, an informational podcast that gives you insights on health and fitness from experts themselves that you can apply directly to your own personal health and fitness stories. Come join me today to hear all about what they have to say on health and fitness. I wanted to start. Let me start by saying I am so grateful. I can see you're very tired. You have
It's
had
okay.
busy day. Plus,
Uh,
you have a beautiful wife, and it's
thank you.
Valentine's.
Thank you.
And this shows your dedication and your love for healthcare, and
Yeah.
medicine, and just you speaking. I am so blessed and grateful.
Thank
Thank you so much.
you for having me on. I appreciate you
Yeah.
as well.
Well, happy Valentine's Day. How was your Valentine's Day so far?
Busy. Don't really celebrate it, but
Yeah.
so it's just, I actually asked my wife, I was like, hey, do you want anything? She's like, no, I'm good. So yeah, it's kind
Well,
of like that.
you'll be out for the weekend, right? You'll be celebrating Valentine's on the weekend.
Uh, sure. It's always Valentine's Day. I never it's I to me it's a unfortunately to me it's a Hallmark holiday. Like I feel like, if you give someone flowers just on this day, it was like, wait, so I'm only important on this day? What about the other
That
364
is
days?
so sweet.
So
Oh
yeah.
my God.
So throughout the year, that's basically the key is do the other little things just because it's a
Yeah.
Tuesday, just because it's a random,
You
yeah. So
the
yeah.
girl inside me is waiting to say "ha." But yeah, that is so sweet. How long have you been married?
12 years, 13 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 13.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me today on
Sure.
this beautiful day,
Mhm.
and let's dive in and
Sure.
start. Let's talk about health. So let me start by asking you, what do you think is health according to you, and how would you define fitness?
Uh, it's a loaded question because as far as like how health goes, um, it's changed over the years from like all my mentors trying to like, treat, and then all the doctors and nurses that I've dealt with in my career in the past 12, 13 years. I've actually been in the medical field for 20. Actually, my first career was as an echocardiologist,
Oh,
and I worked at Cedars. Yeah, so actually, I got into the medical field as a massage therapist because I wanted to get good with my hands. Because I
right.
didn't like, as I was going to UCLA and finishing up my schooling there, on the weekends I would go take courses for massage to finish up my hours. Now, going back in the early 2000s, you only needed about like 500 hours to complete to do your massage care, and then they expanded it, and you need to get. So I did get the licensure for that too, just because I wanted to keep going and taking all the other forms of massage as well, to get good. But I was going to school for echocardiology when UCLA had that program. I think it lasted maybe like 4 or 5 years, and then after 2004, they X'd out a lot of like programs
Mhm.
because they just didn't see fit for a lot of the medical programs, and they wanted to put money through different programs. Um, so I worked at Cedars for 3, 4 years under a really good cardiologist in the nation at that time. So it kind of like I went through my paces. That's why I kind of went the PTA route than the PT, because I felt like I've done like so much
Yeah.
schooling uh, throughout the years. I didn't, really think about PT, and there's like, because most of us get into this field, you get hurt and you go into there like, oh, wait, you guys get paid for this? I want to do this
Yes.
kind of thing. So that's kind of like, what it turned out was like, and being always involved in athletics and sports and my entire life. So it's, and that part has been kind of like really easy to me because I can mesh well with like a lot of the athletic department. But as far as like the health sector, the way it's growth, it's always volatile because it's always changing.
Right.
So who knows where it goes from here? I mean, a lot of like the surgeons now are doing a lot more robotics. I would have never thought we would have got to that point where a lot of orthopedic surgeons are doing robotics in all forms, not only just orthopedics, but like I think all spectrums of medicine, robotics is being introduced, and there are other invasive forms of techniques being used. So as far as our field goes in the health sector, that's also evolved because now like people have free access to come see your PT without like, most states, we got like I think 34, 35 states now.
Right.
So and it's evolved where it's not only PT, like, because it's a lot of education, like telling people that even you could still do prehab and do active recovery.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily need to be hurt. You can kind of do maintenance because, you get your weekend warriors, they just want to keep going. Or, I've got a lot of like 67-year-old guys that they stay pretty fit, but they want to keep continuing to play like, in their softball leagues, baseball leagues, they still want to play pickup hoops and stuff
Right.
like that. So they just want certain things to kind of keep them going. And it's that in that regard, it's evolved in that with different modalities, not in the sense of like the old school modalities with like ultrasound or like TENS, but from the standpoint of companies like Novatech who have like have or Hyper Ice that have all these kind of like things to offer to people. But it's in the recipe of your methodology, like
Mm-hmm.
how you can kind of put things together and make it marketable to get people to come and make it work for you. So there's all these moving pieces. So you're constantly playing chess to see what you want to do as far as like how you want to
Right.
treat. So in that regard, it becomes like, your business sense and then like your healthcare sense, because with the state of how insurances are working, I think more and more clinicians are going to cash-based protocol
Right.
and having different tiers of things, um, where when you do get people that have injuries, that don't necessarily want to do surgery, that they're capable of getting PRP. Now they have the long-lasting PRP and the short-term PRPs for those. So I'm kind of spoiled in that regard because I do live in Los Angeles. I know a lot of these doctors that kind of do that. So in that regard, it's really simple. It's kind of hard to send people in the wrong direction
Right.
now. So especially out here. So, but as far as that goes, it's always open for discussion. It can go either way. It really goes down to the criteria of what your experiences have been versus like outpatient, inpatient, or whatever else, however you treat. So,
How is your approach towards all the healthcare system since it's so dynamic and it's so changing? Like you mentioned, how people are switching from the insurances to private practices
mhm.
and the cash-based practices, and I'm noticing a lot of those changes right now. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about those things?
I think it's better for the clinician as far as to go to a cash-based practice, obviously. Uh, I I mean, at the end of the day, anybody who does this, there's no in between. You either love it or hate it, and you don't do it anymore. You keep doing it, but like I said, like the state of like insurances don't like allow a lot of clinicians to kind of spread their wings and do certain things, and you see a lot of burnout. So I think clinicians have started to see that. If they start trying to dip their toes into that water, is that it opens up a lot of other avenues for them. But a lot of clinicians don't like the ones that have been in practice for years,
Right.
that are a little bit older and have had their practice for like 10, 15 years. I mean, I've had my fair share of working with those clinicians and speaking with them. And what it really comes down to is they don't want to because they have a safety net, so they're kind of scared to kind of go in that position. And a lot of the ones that are like tipping towards like that retirement age and want to sell their practice, and these bigger groups end up buying their practice to kind of monetize and make bigger groups. So I just feel that like if you do have a practice and you do have a niche and you're good in your niche, you're better off going to a private practice unless like you can hook up with like an orthopedic and everything is in-house and make it work and you guys are on the same page. So it took me a while to kind of get here. I think everybody has to pay their dues some way, some form, until like you can kind of find your way. So in that regard, but totally, I'm all for people going to private practice, um, because you're going to give the people that are actually looking for what you have,
Right.
as far as the consumer, because people say like, yo, well, I'm not trying to be a businessman, or I just want to treat, well, like at the end of the day, you do have to sell yourself as what you're trying to sell yourself. You're not, yeah, for sure. You're not trying to be a salesman, but you are. You're a
Yeah.
salesperson at the end of the day, because you have to basically show value of what you're showing and what you're going to provide, as far as what you can provide the person, or they can just go somewhere else, right? So it's the same thing with insurance based and cash based is, what sacrifices are you willing to make, but in the end run, it's how well you can market yourself.
Right. What do you think about the competition that's out there in this growing market? Especially, like you said, the field of PT
Mm-hmm.
is growing. There's so much of competition out there.
Mm-hmm.
I know so many people who are in the business and who are like looking to expand.
Right.
Um, how do you deal with the competition out there?
So, for me, you know, I've always tried to be like more innovative and see what kind of like is clicking and working, as far as obviously the area you work in. I'm fortunate to be in this area where it's saturated with phenomenal schools, from high school to colleges, that are always in top tier of athletics. The area that I'm in probably houses five of the best high schools in most sports, especially basketball right now. So in that regard, you just have to kind of, you know, be in the right place to kind of set yourself up in a
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to open up like a sports clinic in like, Nantucket, you're not going to do that well. So you have to know the room, right? So you have to know your space. Obviously, if it's saturated with enough people, you have to be confident in like what you provide and how you can provide it to the public so they can see it. And then, networking. I
Yeah.
network with all these schools. I talk to the athletic trainers. I keep in touch. I make sure I talk to the parents of like a lot of the athletes. So, but ultimately, what it comes down to is
Right.
if they get better from their injury, and then they can get better from their sport with like the limited time that I do have before they can go back into their sport. But most of the time they're coming in the off season, and like if I've showed value, that's really what it comes down to. If you show value and they can kind of benefit off of that, they're going to do really well, and you're going to kind of like set yourself up where you don't really have to worry about competition in a sense of uh, with other clinics, but there's enough where you live in a big city, like people are comfortable kind of driving to something closer anyway. So it just becomes, kind of like a local like region.
Right.
But if you can corner that market, then you won't really have to worry about competition. Yeah.
How's the sports practice in physical therapy in LA?
Competitive,
Yeah.
competitive, but if you know what you're doing, it doesn't matter. Yeah, if you can speak to what you know and you can actually put it into play, it doesn't matter. So I don't look behind me anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Always keep moving forward. That's the
Yeah,
mantra.
right.
Makes sense. Do you do just sports injuries, or you're also doing, I know you're doing a lot of ortho cases. What about neuromuscular?
In the beginning of my career, I did. I did a lot of like neuro stuff and had a lot of stroke. And um, for when I was in school, I actually had to do a burn unit rotation. So that was fun in a
Yeah,
way. I mean, I learned a lot. I wouldn't do it every day, and
yeah,
obviously, I worked in neuro. Like I pretty much have done every facet of therapy to see what I like. So, and like when we do get students or like I get people that are interested in therapy, I always tell them kind of see
mm,
what's out there, see what you like, and then that way you can kind of find your niche because there's always something new popping up, and there's always someone new that is innovative that'll kind of like start doing new things and people will start running with that.
right.
So I've been mentored well when I was younger, so now like I can start passing it on in a
Yeah.
sense. So, but yeah,
Tell us about your story, about your mentorship story.
being mentored or mentoring.
Oh,
Um, I've had a lot of like basically unintentional mentors that never like really approached me. It was like, hey, take me under your
yeah.
wing. It's just like, I think people want to mentor you if you're really excited about the work.
Yes.
So people that like, I mean, I'm sure you've come across that do really well and into the field and they're starting on, they're really passionate about their work that you'll kind of take them and I never like I never took it under criticism.
Mm-hmm.
The first I would say mentor I had was actually when I was an aide when I lived in Las Vegas. I had a PT who took interest in like my interest in the field because I was always asking questions. So I kind of watched her. She let me kind of like shadow a lot, and she just taught me a lot. So and it was good. And then over the years, just being in different clinics, but I'd been an aide and in the medical field for so long
Yeah.
that I just hit the road running when I got done with school and I had a job out of school and I was ready to go. So I think the field of medicine has just been really good to me because I think I've always loved anatomy and physiology and biomechanics. So it's just kind of like a
Yeah.
cakewalk in a sense because when you're so embedded into the work and you're all about it, like it just pays off. It just becomes easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really it's been a grind, but it's been awesome.
How about mentoring? How do you feel that?
Yeah, so if I've had students before, like they've always come back for the summers to kind of volunteer and stuff. I don't do a lot of students as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
One, I don't have the time,
Right.
and then second, I've noticed whenever I've had students and I've given them like at least like 40-50% of my patient
Yeah.
load, the after like their 8-12 weeks whenever they get done you get your full caseload back and you're just drained because it's like, oh, I've had all this.
And
So I just kind of like to keep it going.
You're
Maybe if I get a little bit older, then like my time, like diminishes, then I can maybe split, do a little bit more mentorship, and but no, I've had a great success with having a lot of PTs over the years that I've gotten to work with, and they've been amazing, and it's been awesome to kind of like tag team, because when you're in the same role as far as that,
yeah,
and you've kind of taken things from them, it's easy to kind of give back to whoever's in that spot. So a lot of the aides that I have, like, and they're getting ready to kind of like transition into like a PT program or PTA program, like it's easy to kind of like work with them, and so, and then as far as like taking criticism or giving criticism, like a lot of the students now that I kind of get, they've been kind of like sensitive as far as like taking criticism. But so sometimes like now, because before when I was coming up, like like if a PT was getting underneath me, I always knew that they were getting on me because they cared. So in my mind, like it's always been like people are always going to criticize you if they care about you,
mm-hmm.
because if they don't say anything, they no longer care, so they're not going to say anything. So sometimes I had to remind people, I was like, hey, if I'm on you, there's a reason. Same thing with athletes or like patients, like if I'm not telling you anything, I might not like you.
Yeah,
So, or like I'm just giving you the same energy, that if you don't care, I'm not going to care either, kind of like, especially in the athletes spectrum. So if they find an inch, and they know they can get away with things, you have to start cracking the whip.
yeah.
So,
When I'm
yeah,
scolding my patients, they know that they're really my favorite patients.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, exactly, yeah.
so I feel you there. Are there any misconceptions that you come across in your field?
Uh, in what regard?
Just in um, just in regards to how you see your patients, or because being a PT
Mm,
or PTA is not easy.
mm,
Number one, I know you have a background of massage,
mm,
so you can tell that
mm,
people come in with certain expectations,
mm,
or they have certain misconceptions about your field.
uh-huh.
So do you come across any such sports related
No,
misconceptions?
as far as that goes, because I am a PTA, but I have backgrounds in sports and other degrees and stuff like that in biomechanics. But I, I think earlier on, like a lot of times that people didn't want to see a PTA, and then they would go and see the PT.
Mm-hmm.
But then the PT didn't have like a sports background, and then like they would get on my schedule once if the PT was out, and then like I would treat them like, oh, I should have been on your
Yeah.
schedule, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So like it's been kind of like that. So kind of like selling
Mm-hmm.
myself in the beginning, because in your first 5 years of practicing, and this still happens.
Right.
It's still ongoing. Your first 5 years as a clinician, you tend to kind of feel yourself, and you feel like you know it all, and you start to kind of like implement the things because
Mm-hmm.
people around you are getting better, and you're just like thing, and because you're not really getting all the hard cases just yet.
Right.
So and then by the time you get to year seven, you realize, but in year five you really didn't know that much. And
Right.
then by year 10, you're like, oh, like, okay. And you start to kind of feel the nuances of where to take people, and you understand like people are going to end up doing what they want to do, as far as, because when the peak of CrossFit hit, people were like getting hurt,
Yeah.
and I was like very adamant about, like, don't do CrossFit, don't do these things. And now it's just like, okay, well, if you're going to do an exercise, uh, A, B, and C are going to happen, and you need to do these things because at the end of the day, I can't stop a runner from running. If you love running, fine, okay, but here's what's going to happen. Here's your longevity. But so I can't stop it because before I was like, no, you need to stop doing this. But that was like year 3 and 5, and then 7, you start to kind of realize like, oh, okay, well, at the end of the day, like, people are going to like to do different things, and you start to kind of realize that. So the misconceptions are coming from in regards to that. And then as far as like a career base, like um, kind of like selling myself in a way where like, yeah, like, well, I have all these tangible things to offer you, but yes, I am a PTA, but like I come with a ton of experience
Right.
and on top of like life experience in a different field. So it's been kind of like back and forth in that aspect, but yeah, that as far as the misconceptions, that's kind of like what I've run into.
Right. Makes sense.
Hmm.
You work with a lot of athletes. Do you
Hmm.
find them? I'm sure you find them, lack motivation now and again with so many recurrent sports injury.
Hmm.
How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them going?
It's twofold because you either get your pro athletes
Mm-hmm.
when they get hurt, they they take about like a week or two to kind of like calm down and really assess like where they are, because most athletes, whatever level they are, there's just that like psychological effect of it's like, great, I
Yeah.
was like, so what is this going to look like in the next like few months? But under the tutelage of a good therapist, like nowadays with all the things that we have, if your rehab is done right, and most of these guys, they want to get back to being better, because most injuries that happen, barring any trauma or contact injuries, they're non-contact movements that happen. So most of the time that when that's happened, they've either not prepped right, or they have muscle imbalances that they've kind of like dealt with, and they've gotten hurt with non-contact activities, right? So what it comes down to is after they've kind of calmed down is like explaining like, this happened because you've had these things, and you go through your muscle testing phases, and you get them upbeat by doing like different things, and making it a little bit more fun. But I feel as though like a lot more surgeries now, the return time is much quicker for a lot, like, because now like when I get ACL guys, or like even not so much Achilles but mostly ACL, their bounce back time is remarkable. I almost have to hold them back. I was like, hey, like, we're not, this is month 3, you can't be doing certain things yet. But I think in the next few years, because the surgeries have gotten better, they're introducing more PRP during the surgeries now, to kind of basically as like an add-on to heal faster, for these younger guys, or prolotherapy or whatever they're doing, right, for them. Um, the it's I think the protocols will probably change
Mm-hmm.
because of, because I have a lot of guys that are like 3 months out, but they're realistically at 6. So because, you put them under the right care, you get the quad to fire, you get other things to fire, you work the posterior chain, and it just kind of takes off from there. And now it's just like holding them on a leash. It was like, no, you can't do this and this and that, because you're still having to deal with the surgeon in a sense where you don't want to get yelled at.
Also,
So,
I agree with you 100%. I have seen such beautiful surgeries and
uh-huh.
such great advancements. I had an ACL case very recently. She had a beautiful
Mhm.
surgeon, and the surgery was done very beautifully. And
Yeah,
again, we did so much of pre rehab before the surgery
right.
that she was so good. Her quads were
Yeah,
already um, strong enough to take the load. Her
right.
quads were she was doing squats on in the first week. In the
Hmm.
second week, we were doing mini squats, and we kept increasing the range, and the bounce back after
Hmm.
the surgery was tremendous. And
Right.
now she got back to work completely with all her ranges strength in 5 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's basically if you've done the prehab and
yeah,
you know the I think the only thing that usually lacks on I think on most surgery where if it's like the allograft or autograft or if they're doing like even the quad tendon like repair what happens is the quad kind of like on most ACLs still kind of lags for a few months before it can start kicking out to get density. So, but now that's why we have BFR, like the different systems to kind of like introduce more of that, which has tons of studies and it's worked well.
yeah,
So I think people are getting innovative with doing different exercises to kind of like get that to kick in. So
yeah.
yeah, it's fun.
I love it. We've
Yeah.
started to introduce the eSTEM
Hmm.
machine because we put our patients on eSTEM, and I've started to introduce exercises with their eSTEM.
Like the
So
NMES.
yes.
Yes.
So when they're on the stem, and
Hmm.
we'll give them like static quadricep contraction,
Hmm.
or holding of a ball like between their legs and just
Right.
contracting the
Right.
ball. Quad kicks, just sitting with your legs up and just kicking.
Yeah.
I've seen tremendous effect with e-stem plus the
Mm.
exercising.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, that's a big one. If you can introduce the NMES and actually, the first few weeks, if you can just put it on there and just do some, quad extensions and glute med stuff and like get that to kind of fire. But you know, even when they can start standing on it, doing terminal knee extensions with the NMES. There's a lot of things you can do. It just depends where they're at in their rehab
yeah.
and how comfortable they are. But yeah, that works well. I actually do the NMES with the BFR.
Oh,
I do it at the same time.
wow.
Yes. Yeah. So I do both and it works well.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, because with the BFR you're cutting the rehab in half if you're doing a lot of the exercises. So now more of the criteria that's come out that helps kind of like reintroduce like that musculature and get the strength back for the VMO and other things like that. I mean, there's still a lot of therapists that was like, well, you can't really train the VMO. I'm like, yes, you can. You just have to find, certain things to kind of make that muscle fire for that individual. So, yeah, it's worked great. So, that's kind of been like my background is just to become more innovative
yeah,
and find new ways to kind of, because a lot of times like people, a lot of clinicians still kind of do this, like where I've been in other places, they kind of treat like the criteria of the injury. They treat the injury versus the person.
yeah,
So whenever I get people, like, I tend to get, I treat the person versus the injury.
definitely.
So yeah.
Yeah, I had a patient with both hip surgery, one hip
Mm,
replacement, and the other with metals and screws,
mm,
and with the plates and screws. And she came to me with a walker, and she's very young, in her 50s, 54,
mm.
56. And we started doing rehab. Amazing progress. Within 4 months, 5 months, she's doing amazing.
Right.
But then one fine day, she comes with like a sprain,
Mm,
and she's like, "No, I can't do it. Like I'm feeling like all of my muscles are sore all the
mm,
time." And we do the protocol.
mm,
We're just resting. We're just stretching. We're doing lots of co-packs. Just nothing crazy.
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and I don't find anything because we're working on strength, we're working on strength, like everything. Muscle balance is good, the strength is good, ranges are good. So then I sit with her one day and I talk to her, and she's like, I miss gardening because I've been gardening all my life, and
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing I'm not able to do, and that's why I feel very low. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, there you go, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
We go, we get a gardening kit, and we start. I made a protocol for her where just 30-40 minutes we're just doing exercises that was meant for gardening.
Right.
And within a week we saw again the level of progress, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so you have to be very patient and work with one-on-one
Yeah.
patient, like that. That's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly, I don't care what anybody says. 6 months of any injury is
Mm-hmm.
psychological. So, like, when someone it gets injured and they can't kind of do what they're used to
Yeah.
doing, and especially with like a lot of these like younger guys or athletes, like male or female,
Mm-hmm.
or like take it into any injury that's
Yeah.
debilitating. Six months of that injury is psychological because they're it's diminished as far as what they can do. So not only that they want to get and restore function for that, but be able to do it better than they did before. But in the sports field, what's scary for most people is when they go back to play. That's why you see a lot of, even at the pro level,
Yeah.
like an ACL or Achilles rehab, that player would play better their second year than their first year because they're kind of getting a feel back for their legs or whatever injury they did have. Because specifically with basketball, if you're going back and you're trying to jump into traffic of people, half the time you're second guessing. It's like, well, I don't want to go in there and get a rebound, or I don't want to go in between like two players and land on somebody again. So it's just this kind of like tug of war you have with yourself. So 6 months of that rehab, because even when you do like force absorption, like jump downs with to kind of get people's legs to kind of be in the right set of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So in most cases, you're really looking for people to like land and make sure their knee isn't collapsing from
Yeah.
valgus, right? But in my head, I was like, this is for you to get comfortable and get confident
Yeah.
back in that. Because at some point, you're still going to have a level of valgus, but your knee is sturdy enough, but you need to realize that. And you need to kind of take that with you and be able to kind of progress. So the next time you come in, we could do a little bit more without you being in your head. So it goes to the same concept of the lady wanting to be able to garden. Until you kind of take her there, she won't know because her body's got to adapt to what it needs to be seeing, you know. And that's all in all facets of any injury or getting back to what normalcy is for whoever. Yeah.
Yeah. We did the same thing with another patient. He didn't run for eight
Yeah.
years because he had a patella. His patella grew another bone right behind it.
Oh, you had osteophyte. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
there was an osteophyte, and the doctors were not able to give any reason.
Mm,
And the worst thing was, this was workers' compensation. So the patient
mm,
comes saying that the doctor asked me to go to PT to
mm,
get it surgically removed.
right.
I'm like, what are you talking about? This
Mm,
is physical therapy. We don't remove the bone.
mm,
We can definitely, get you stronger
sorry.
before and after the
Mm,
surgery, but we cannot do anything in between.
mm,
So we did that. He got his surgery. He came back,
mm,
and we started running within 1 month.
mm,
4 weeks, fifth week, we were running, and he was like, Bhavna, I did not run for 8 years.
mm,
You made me run.
right.
So that was amazing. And like you said, it's all a major part is psychology. Once you're comfortable, once they're confident,
Mm,
then it's all
yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah. And you know, there's people that have had really bad surgeries. I've had a lady that had like you know, kind of like a botched
Mm-hmm.
surgery, and she dealt with it. So for years, she thought she can do certain things, so she was limited. So she would basically, she bottlenecked herself where she thought she can only do certain exercises. But you know, when you introduce them in a certain way, sure, she had her aches and pains after a while, but then like, you know, because you know, when you get a person like that, you have to undo what they've done and then basically get a clean canvas and
Mm-hmm.
then draw your masterpiece on them, right? So that's basically like what I had to do is I have to undo what you did and then start from scratch. But at least when you start from scratch and you have no pain, you can actually head in the right direction without getting hurt like further, you know. So um, she did well. She wanted to go climb one of these crazy devil's peaks places. I don't know. She's doing well, so I'm happy for her. So it's always nice to kind of like do that for
Yeah.
people that kind of, you know, but at the end it's just getting to the right person, which I think a lot of people, you know, they come to me as like, well, it's take me a long time to find the right person to think, but you know what helps is like having a social media presence and being on social media and showcasing what you can do. So at the end of the day, you know, people can always come and try me, you know what I mean, and see if I can get you there. So because what that's what really PT is, you know, you're using us as a vessel to
Mm-hmm.
kind of get you there. So, but um, whether people listen or not is up to them.
What are your
So,
upcoming projects or plans for this year?
a lot of plans, a lot of things to do. Trying to get into a new clinic with a bigger space pretty soon
That's all.
here in another location. So just coming up on spring and summer, so gonna get a lot of these guys coming in for end of the season for either basketball or start of the season baseball or softball, girls this, boys that. So there's always something. But as far as projects, probably just getting into a you know newer facility and then just promoting that and more active recovery stuff.
Yeah.
You know, sky's the limit.
Definitely. I'm so
Yeah.
happy for your bigger space, bigger expansion, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So any last few words that you'd like to tell all the audience out there who are starting to begin their career or who are looking for people like you?
Mhm. You know, I would tell them like if you're going to be going to school, like, you know, just learn as much as you can, volunteer, you know, go to your PT's office and shadow, see what you
Yeah.
like, um, network. That's a big part of I think anything that you're getting into is like networking, getting in front of the right people,
Hmm?
and then you know with the athletes out there, I guess don't get hurt.
That's come on, they're gonna get hurt.
Yeah, so it's an
Yeah,
inevitable. So I'll see you when you do get hurt, but don't get hurt.
that's a good one. No.
Yeah,
When you get hurt, you
yeah,
see me.
there you go.
Well, anyone who wants to find you, can you let them know where they can find you?
Yeah, you know, they can find me through my IG. I'm on Instagram. You can message me. I'm pretty open to messages, and I'm over here with primary care sports medicine, and we have a location in Tarzana as well as Gura. So the new locations will be in the same vicinity, but our website is primarycaresportsmedicine.com. You can reach us through that. All of our bios, we have amazing physicians on staff
Yeah.
and amazing therapists. Obviously, myself, Ernest, and Taryn. Sorry, I almost forgot her name because I'm so tired. So yeah, Taryn has been here the longest. She's our clinical director. And then I co-lead, I handle all the other social media stuff. So they can either reach me through the website. My email's almost on my IG as well, so feel free to contact me. So
It's
yeah,
awesome. If I'm anytime I'm in LA, I'm gonna come drop
absolutely.
by.
I would be remiss if you didn't stop by to just come and say hi and meet everybody, and would love to have you in here and touch base. And this was amazing. Thank you for having me
Definitely,
on.
it was really fun.
Yeah,
And if you're in New York, especially with your wife, please come drop
absolutely.
by.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. Have a
Appreciate
lovely
you. You too.
Valentine's.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening to our talk about health. You can follow me on Instagram at bhavna.devnani, on Facebook at bhavna devnani, and we'll leave all the information in the description below. Thank you.